What's going on, folks? Ted from Nerd Immersion here, and I am here with my good friend Dan, and we're going to talk to you. You may have seen him on other games here on the channel, or just know him from his own stuff. There's a ton of stuff out there as well, but I'll let him intro himself in just a bit here. But we're going to talk about the D&D movie. For those of you who don't know, there was an early screening that happened today on the 19th across at least the States. I don't know about outside of the States, but for Amazon Prime members, which was a cool little fun thing that I think not a lot of people knew about. I mean, we're going to dive into it, but Dan, why don't you tell people who you are if they're unfamiliar?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Dan. You can find me pretty much everywhere on the internet at Nat1Fun. I kind of do a lot of stuff in the D&D world, especially. But you can find me doing a lot of stuff like actual plays. You can see me here on this channel. I've done an actual play before here, as well as my own stuff. Again, at Nat1Fun, you'll find me on YouTube, on Twitch, and mostly on Twitter. But I do actual plays, and I also do a lot of production for the shows. So a lot of behind the camera stuff you don't see, but on like the bigger productions, I'll probably be involved in some way.
Awesome. And before we dive into the movie review, by the way, I should say this video that you're watching now will be completely spoiler free. We'll cover things that have been talked about in the trailer or that you may have seen, but nothing unique. So don't fear for spoilers in here. That'll be in a separate standalone video after this. But I did want to say that this video is brought to you by our good friends over at Start Playing, which is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, resource out there for finding games that you want to play in, whether they be you looking as a professional GM to run games, to possibly use this as a means of making money, or possibly as your primary job in some instances, or if you're just like, hey, I want to play a game and I have time this Thursday at 6 p.m. What games are available? You could do that, from everything from things you might know like D&D and Pathfinder to very obscure games. They could be, some of them are free, especially intro stuff a lot of the times is free. And it's a really great resource. And Dan, I know you've actually been doing a lot more Start Playing stuff too. So you want to just give a quick, what's your experience been like?
Yeah, no, Start Playing has been a wonderful resource for me. The fact is as a GM, I kind of got into the TTRPG space, kind of wanting to try and make a little bit of money doing it. You know, being that I've already got a ton of resources, I've built up a library of such of sorts, and I kind of just wanted to be a storyteller to as many people as possible. And one of the best ways to do it is by going to Start Playing and just kind of digging into the pool of resources that they have available to kind of just, I guess, really just dig into. I just tons of random individuals that want to play a game at any given time.
Yeah, it's a great resource. Games. Link in the video description as well as the pinned comment. So thanks again to them for sponsoring this video. So, all right, the D&D movie is out. So let's start with this. Have you seen any of the other movies? Let's start there. The
Okay.
other ill-fated D&D movies of the past.
So it's funny, we were talking about this beforehand, and I have seen the first Dungeons and Dragons, the official one that came to theaters and everything like that. I saw that one.
Okay.
I did not see the other two.
Yeah,
The
thanks.
other, yeah, the other two. But I mean, I'm obviously going to make a point to do it now.
Sure.
But I had not seen them prior to seeing this movie that I went to go see today. But the first movie I did go see.
Okay. So you do, so we have a really good comparison, both of the
Yeah.
ones that
Oh, for
were
sure.
theatrically released by studios with name
Mhm.
actors in them. We can compare those. So obviously, I think we can both say without fail,
Yeah.
this is leaps and bounds better than that in every way.
By far. And
Mm,
that is to say that the first movie wasn't like the worst movie in the world, but it also wasn't that great to begin with. But yes, this is definitely by far, far better.
yeah, we talked a little bit about before this. I went and saw it with my wife, who's like has D&D knowledge because she lives in my house, and you just kind of osmosis
It's like
absorb some of the
osmosis. Yeah.
yeah.
Same, same.
And she, just as taking it more as a general moviegoer, was also a fan of it. And my theater that I was in, every seat sold. So it obviously, people wanted to see this and wanted to see it early, which I think is also a good sign. Um, Flat out, this is a movie that I could go see again a second time in the theater. I'm usually not a multiple moviegoer kind of guy anyway, but like I wouldn't feel like I could still probably pick out more stuff and there'd be a reason to see it again.
Yeah,
Um,
so this was definitely a movie where after, because like I have kids, so
sure.
the way my wife and I do movies is I'll go watch the movie first while she watches the kids, and then she'll go watch the movie while I watch the kids. But this is a movie that I was like, babe, we're gonna find a babysitter because I'm coming back again, and we're gonna watch this movie together because I know there's gonna be moments where you're gonna turn to me and I'm gonna turn to you, and it'll be like, they did the
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
thing.
Yeah, yeah, we definitely had some experiences like that. So I guess we'll start off. I mean, the overall story, I'd say it does a good job, and this is again stuff that's been corroborated in interviews and things in the trailer. It does a pretty good job of what I would imagine is capturing a little bit more than like a singular D&D session, but not like a full campaign. We have like an arc, I guess I would say,
Yeah,
is what
yeah,
this does.
absolutely. It's like a truncated like campaign. It's like a 3 or 4 shot kind of thing.
Yeah, like it starts off kind of smaller stakes, it gets to bigger, but it's not like end of the world, like these are the ultimate superhero
Right.
kind of
Yeah.
characters. And I think that serves it well because it keeps the scope relatively small. And I
Yeah.
think that does a good job of, you don't have to pull in all of these outside resources and have a ton of knowledge to really wrap your head around what's happening. It's
Right.
self-contained in that way.
Mhm.
And I guess that's a point too, right? If you're on the fence as a D&D fan or a non-D&D fan, you can go into this totally blind and anything you need to
Right.
know, you'll learn in the course of the movie.
Yeah, they didn't go from that whole like level 1 feel at the start of the movie all the way to like that level 20 feel at the end of it. There was no like big jump to try and jam pack everything about Dungeons and Dragons into one movie, which I
Hmm.
think makes it great because that just means they can make more in the future and they can touch on topics that they didn't in this one.
And I think talking pacing wise, I was thinking about this. It doesn't at least in my opinion, it's not too quick, but it also doesn't have any slog points where you're like, okay, when is this gonna end? Things kept along, I think, at a relatively decent clip throughout from start to finish.
Yeah.
So even if you're in a dialogue based scene, it's not too long before you're into something a little more actiony, a little more magicy, Dungeons and Dragons related. So I
Yeah.
think that should do well to keep people interested in the movie from start to finish. What do you think?
I think it's great in terms of the way they played it out, because to me, it felt like there was never a boring pace. I felt like it was like as soon as it started to like slog in one thing, it was immediately like jumping to another kind of
Hmm.
thing. So it was like the moment I kind of got comfortable with the scene, it jammed, like it threw me into another one, which is great because it's filled with content,
Hmm.
but not overbearing so to where it's like I don't know what's going on. It followed a really good story arc the whole way through.
And I gotta say, the effects, couple of, we'll talk about some of them more in the spoiler video, but a
Sure.
couple effects seemed a little off, but a lot of it was practical effects. And those practical effects were good.
It was so good. It was so good. It's a mix between Star Wars, like the old school
Hmm.
puppetry and stuff like that, and I feel like it gave it its own like I don't know. It definitely didn't have like that Jim Henson feel. Like the I guess it didn't feel like somebody was in the suit kind of thing,
Hmm.
but it definitely felt like it was like touched carefully, and every little detail was there, like that was supposed to be there, and the dialogue and everything like that of those characters hit so well that it doesn't take you out of the moment. It's really really well done.
So you brought up characters. What did you think about all, I mean, we know we have our kind of our main party and we
Yeah.
have a couple of villains that are again tossed around and stuff in the trailers. So what did you think? Did you like the characters? Any that you liked more than others, or was there any that you didn't like? What are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
yeah. So absolutely, I'm going to be probably an outlier here, but I adored the intermixing of the paladins way of looking at things
Mhm.
versus the entire rest of the group's way of
Sure.
looking at things, and it felt like Dungeon Master versus your friends. Like
Yeah, yeah.
the friends are the party, and your paladin is the dungeon master trying to keep things on track and in a rail, and then everybody else just doing whatever. I think the paladin added a flavor to the movie that actually to me felt like it basically just completely added to the actual feel of the movie, like instead of hindering it, which you think a paladin would be able to do, I'm the upright upstanding
Mhm.
citizen kind of thing. It absolutely did not play like that. It was like perfect in lines of how a regular D&D session would go.
Yeah, and I think that's one of and I think again it doesn't really give anything away, but that's one of the way I think this movie really excels is that if you look at it from a movie perspective, just as a general moviegoer, okay, this is a character. This character is here. He's doing things, and that's all good. But if you look at it with the keen eye of somebody who's played D&D, it's like, okay, the party needs to get a thing. They have to get the MacGuffin for the purpose of doing whatever they need to do. But
Yeah.
it's too high level of a thing for them to handle. I'll send an NPC along with them because I need to guide them in the general direction that I want them, and I need somebody to try to rein them in. So you bring in this slightly higher power character who's going to exposition drop what they need, will be able to carry them in combat if need be, and like then when they're done, they're done. And that is like I said, that's I could see that scene exactly playing out at any table that I've been at. It's just like, oh, yep. And then of course, the only thing that didn't happen is the party didn't constantly beg that character to stay, which is what happens every time you bring in a really
Yeah.
powerful NPC. All the players are like, but no, but really though, you should just join us.
Yeah.
And they're like, no,
Yeah.
I have to go. And they're like, but no, for real though.
Yeah, it's tough to just have them leave without just being like, okay, they died somehow. Oh no, or
Yeah,
like
right.
having to like permanently get rid of them just so the players will continue on without them. Yeah.
Um, I was gonna say I think the acting really well done. Surprised probably the most by Hugh Grant as Forge.
Oh, that was
I
wild.
think I think fantastic job.
Hmm.
I liked all of the characters. The only thing I'll say is I think Michelle Rodriguez is one of those actresses that just they're always Michelle Rodriguez in every role they're in.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
whether they're in Fast and the Furious or Resident Evil or Dungeons and Dragons, it's Michelle Rodriguez but in a D&D skin.
May I say this
Yeah,
though? Michelle Rodriguez is a barbarian in
that's
everything
correct.
she plays.
That's also very true. Yeah. So I thought
So typecasting.
yeah, I guess typecasting is definitely a thing. So I think it fit the character, kind of this sort of monosyllabic stoic not too
Hmm.
emotional character, but I also just looked at it and I was like, oh, it's just Michelle Rodriguez. But it fit the story and it fit the character, and we've all played with people who play a character like that, so it all works out for me in the long run. But as far as like that would, in my opinion, would be like the poorest acting if you want to consider a specific actor or performance there. But other than that, um, I thought the dialogue was pretty well done. It had jokes and it had kind of shenanigans, but I mean that's every D&D game, right? There's
Yeah.
nobody. At least I've never played with somebody who's had a completely serious campaign from start to
Oh
finish.
no, no. I think if you will,
Mm,
I think Justice Smith did an incredible job as the sorcerer,
mm-hmm.
because they could have easily kind of gone into, and this is obviously due to the writing team, but his acting went along with it. But the fact that he was maybe not so like in with it, he
Mm-hmm.
wasn't like this all-knowing, like super. But I think that plays into sorcery not being that high int character, the
Sure.
high
Yeah.
wisdom. It's that charismatic and stuff like that. But I think that Justice Smith did just an awesome job of being that kind of nervous, not so confident type character. Because to be fair, that's a lot of us. Like
Sure.
like a lot of us who play D&D. I myself am not very good with people. I'm not personable, but I absolutely love to jump into the world and just set myself there. And sometimes that leads to me not being like the greatest in situations and
Hmm.
not knowing what to do next and kind of having to lead that same life. So I think that was a really cool portrayal of a sorcerer in this.
Yeah, I liked we got a little bit of we got backstory on all the
Hmm.
characters. I mean, obviously, I think there are novels out now that kind of
Yeah.
give you all that more in depth, but we get enough that it's the characters feel like characters.
Yeah.
There are a couple, and again, we'll talk about it more in spoilers. That I think could have gotten a little more characterization, but all in all, I think, like I said, serviceable enough to get you through to understand everybody's motives, why they're doing what they're doing, why they have thoughts about different things. Uh, I'm trying to think if there's obviously Easter eggs abound. We'll talk about those more once we get into the spoilers as
like
well.
like every scene,
Yeah.
every scene I was like, oh, this, oh, it's the
Mm-hmm.
fit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm serious, every scene I was like, okay, I gotta stop this and actually watch the movie.
Yeah, that's again, that's another reason why there might be definitely warrant a second watch to just
Oh yeah, big
see
time.
what you missed, because there's a lot of, obviously a lot of characters and a lot of scenes, and in some instances I'm like, was that, could that have been somebody, could that have been a D&D character, could have that have been somebody like from the community or something, because I could have sworn that I heard that the cast of Critical Role had some point appearance in this, and I
I
didn't
Yeah, physically I didn't see him.
I looked hard. I was like, I'm gonna and I was like, maybe they're gonna show up at, like, I was hoping like in a group, in a bar or something. And I looked for them.
Hmm.
I didn't see anybody.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they weren't there, but um all right. So it came out in a bunch of stuff beforehand, but I will continue, and I made a video on it, so I'll say it again here. There is no meta anything here. Whether you were
Yeah.
hoping for
Yeah.
that pan out to people playing D&D at a
my
table.
yeah, my viral tweet
Yeah,
on
right.
Twitter, that was like, I hope the very end, that at the very end it pans out and they're all around a table and they're like, all right, same time next week, kind of thing,
Yeah.
and that leads into like the next episode. I don't know, I think it was
I
very
I think
like,
a lot of people felt the same way. Well, in early interviews, Chris Pine said that he akined this to The Princess Bride. And
right,
I was just
yes,
like,
yes.
okay. Then in my, like, I've read into it way too much. But I'm thinking, like, you sit down with grandpa and he's going to read you a
Hmm.
story, or you would sit down, at the table, play D&D, and it goes into the thing. And obviously in The Princess Bride, they cut back out and they cut back
Right.
in. And I was like, are they going to do that? Like, that could be funny at some point. Like, somebody's character dies and then they come back and their eyes are just a different color. And it's like, no, I'm so-and-so's sister, here I am. And then it cuts to the end and it would do something like you were saying, like same time next
They,
week.
I will say this, spoiler free though. Princess Bride absolutely played into this, like
Hmm.
nailed. I will specify the scene in the spoilers video, but there is for sure like Princess Bride like esque scenes in this for sure.
Yeah. So, well, let me ask you. I think we talked a little bit about the effects, the pacing. I think we could both. You can tell it just from the way we're talking about it here that we're both a fan of this movie. Anything else you want to say about this in a non-spoiler capacity?
I will just say this. This movie is a standalone, and this is my personal opinion,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, but
Sure.
this movie is a standalone good movie. If you don't know Dungeons and Dragons and you go into this thinking that it's a fantasy movie, like for those who don't know Game of Thrones and didn't read all the books and
Mm-hmm.
they started watching Game of Thrones and they liked it, they liked Game of Thrones for what it was. This is the same kind of feeling. You go into this movie thinking, okay, I don't know much about Dungeons and Dragons. I know it's in a fantasy world, but you go in and you watch the movie and you come out and it's still a good movie. For those who like Dungeons and Dragons and know things about Dungeons and Dragons, it's a great movie. I'm gonna say it. It's
Yeah.
a great movie.
Yeah. I think. Yeah. It's like you said. It's a good. It's not quite summertime, but this could have been a summertime popcorn flick, right? You could see
Oh
this.
yeah.
I don't remember the rating off of the top of my head. I also didn't feel like it ran too
PG
long.
13.
PG-13. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't feel like it ran too long. Should bring that up, right? It wasn't one of those movies like, is it over?
Uh, yeah, it didn't feel like it. It didn't
I,
feel like by the end of it, it's like too long, too short kind of
yeah,
thing.
I think it was right around. I'm gonna guess it's around that 90-minute
Two
mark.
hour, 20 minutes.
Really?
2
Interesting.
hours, 20 minutes. Yeah.
I'm okay.
It's a
Wow.
little bit
So
longer than normal.
longer than I thought, but you know what? That's the point, right? It didn't feel like it was like, okay, when is this movie gonna end? I thought it was well paced.
Yeah.
Also, a huge benefit. I don't know about you. I had no previews before mine. Like it just started.
No, it literally, I think we did have one preview, but it was like literally just the one and then go.
Yeah, I was at a movie a couple months ago. I had 30 minutes of previews.
What?
Yeah. So
What?
this had like I got a couple minutes late. I sat down and the Paramount thing rolled, and I was like, this is awesome. Early screenings are the way to go.
Perfect. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I agree. This is something you can definitely sit down as just a fan, as a moviegoer, period, just a fan
Yeah.
of cinema. Whether, especially if you're a fan of fantasy, that kind of stuff. Whether it's like you said, like, whether it's you like stuff like Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, any kind of
Mhm.
general fantasy thing, you'll be even more so than the general moviegoer. And yes, if you are a D&D fan, you will get even more out of this. Obviously, if you're knowledgeable about the Forgotten Realms, it'll go further because that's where
Big
it's
time.
set.
Mhm.
But in general, and also I guess something that's it's not spoilery either. You don't have to understand, even if you played D&D, even if you played a different edition of D&D, you don't have to be like super deep in the knowledge of 5th edition to be like, oh, okay, I understand what's happening. Everything is handled like if it's something you need to know specifically, you're told it, right? It's not
Yes.
like,
Right.
oh,
They don't
he's
leave you hanging by just
casting
saying
this
like a name
spell and
drop
yeah, right? Or
and
it's
just
like
leaving it.
yeah, and like and to that point though, it also doesn't get mechanically too complex to the point where we're not referencing like, oh, I don't have any 3rd level spells left. Like that's not happening,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's
They keep it entertaining for moviegoers. It's
mhm,
not you don't get bogged down with rules or whatever you might be thinking. Like, gotta look at your character sheet. Do you have the strength to do that kind of thing? It's not how it plays out. It plays out like a very normal movie.
yeah. So, all right, if you had to give the D&D movie Honor Among Thieves a rating from a scale of 0 or I guess 1 to 10, 10 being the best, and again, we're going to level set this. 5 is average to give you
Mhm.
you know, right? This is
Yeah.
like middle of the road, nothing too great, nothing too poor. What would you scale Honor Among Thieves?
So, giving this a rating of like, I mean, like Avatar, The Last Airbender to Avatar, The Way of Water.
Okay, yeah, fair, fair. Yeah, that's a pretty
Avatar to
good scale.
Avatar. No, giving this a rating, 5 being average, I would say average moviegoer, 7.5.
Okay.
D&D player, 8.5, maybe an 8.5.
Yeah, I was gonna land somewhere in that 8 to 9 frame. So if we go with 8.5, that's I mean, it's not a perfect film by any means, but maybe who
Yeah,
knows? Maybe if I see it a second time, you could go that 9, 10 route, right? For some people, this will definitely be a 10. I also, again, we said it's PG-13. Uh, it didn't like I don't think this would be out of the realm of things that you could, depending on the age of your kids, that you could bring if they're a little bit younger. I didn't think anything was too violent, too scary,
no.
which I think was
I
good
there was
too.
there was a number of curse words, and I think that's pretty much where they
Yeah.
got the rating from. Other than that, I like it's just action, I
Yeah,
guess.
more than anything, yeah. All right, so I think again, any final thoughts? If not, we'll stop this here and we'll jump into a spoiler video here in a sec.
No, my only final thought is you need to go watch that spoiler video right after this because
Yes,
we got
yes.
a lot to talk
Yeah,
about.
we will link that in the description as well as in a card here, and we will catch you guys in just a bit. Bye.